Hello, ladies and gentlemen. My name is Dietrich, and today we are test driving a 2026 Chevrolet Traverse Z71. The Traverse is Chevrolet's largest unibody sport utility vehicle. They make the Tahoe and the Suburban, which are both bigger than this, but they are based on a truck frame. And the Traverse is probably more interesting mechanically than it has any right to be. The Z71 models all come standard with all-wheel drive. All Traverses come standard with a 2.5-liter four-cylinder engine with direct fuel injection that I have to imagine is hooked up to a ginormous turbocharger, because it makes 328 horsepower and 326 torque. That is big output for a 2.5-liter four-cylinder engine. I mean, those would have been respectable numbers for a 5.3-liter V8 not that long ago. A big turbo puts an engine like that under a lot of stress. And quite frankly, it sounds like it's under a lot of stress. It doesn't sound happy. It's grumbly. It's gruff. Yeah. So it does the job. The power output is there. Quite frankly, if you're going to be doing a large amount of towing or hauling of heavy loads or something like that, I would probably be concerned about long-term longevity for a four-cylinder turbo engine in this size of a vehicle, and I would definitely tighten up on the oil change intervals. General Motors recommends every 9 months or 7,500 miles. That's the absolute longest I would go in between oil changes. If you are towing or hauling, I would say cut that down to like 6 months or 6,000 miles, 5,000 miles even at the maximum, if you want to get the longest possible life out of the engine. 8-speed automatic, of course, no problem there. And an all-wheel drive system with an interesting rear differential. So the rear differential in this all-wheel drive system has two clutches, and it can control the power flow from side to side on the rear differential. So in low traction conditions like ice or snow or off-road, sand, mud, that kind of thing, if one wheel starts slipping, it can send the power to the wheel that has more traction. But on-road, as we are now, it can actually send the power side to side to kind of push you through the turn. This is known as torque vectoring. So from the beginning of this test drive video, I have been in the two-wheel drive mode, but if I push a little button down here that says AWD, we have now shifted into all-wheel drive, and you can feel a difference in a few different ways. At kind of, it feels slower when you try to accelerate with the all-wheel drive engaged, because what's going on is you have more parasitic loss on the drive line. The engine's not powering two wheels now, it's powering four wheels, so it has to work harder. But if you give it a little throttle through the turn, it does corner flatter, and you feel like you have more control even on a dry road. And the reason why you have to give it a little throttle, don't floor it through a turn. I mean, I guess you can if you want. It's your car. I don't recommend that, though. But the rear differential needs power to do what it does. And it does corner a little bit flatter. You don't get quite as much body roll when you have the all-wheel drive engaged and you give it a little bit of power. And it definitely improves the handling, and I like that. I feel like if I had one of these cars, I might just drive it around in all-wheel drive all the time, because to me it's a little bit more enjoyable. But it's cool that you can turn it off, because I'm sure you get, you probably pick up a couple miles per gallon if you're in the front-wheel drive mode. But the rear differential, that dual clutch system back there that makes it better both on-road and off-road, that's a really cool feature. And I like that. And to me, General Motors is the most frustrating of all the automotive manufacturers, because when they really want to, when they put their minds to it, they are amongst the best in the world. But so often they just half-ass it and phone it in. So I'm getting some reflection in my eye right now off of this chrome steering wheel. And when I drove it the other way, I was getting a lot off of this center console right here. One thing I noticed, and I notice it more often in General Motors cars than other types of vehicles, is just the amount of reflection you get off of stuff in the cabin on a sunny day. And it's like, didn't any of you shade tree engineers take one of these piles around the block before you put it into production to figure this out? What in the world? It's currently a Sunday, so everybody's out for a Sunday drive, so that's fine. Oh, yeah. You can feel, though, when you're in all-wheel drive, that 4-cylinder engine has to work a little bit harder. You definitely can feel that. 328 horsepower, 326 torque. The thing that's crazy about that to me, out of a 2.5 liter 4-cylinder, okay? I had a 2017 Subaru WRX STI, which is meant to be a high-performance car, turbocharged, blah, blah, blah. And by 2017, the engine in that car was an old design, but it was a 2.5 liter, 4-cylinder, turbocharged, 305 horsepower and 290 torque. And that, you know, that was with a big turbo and a lot of boost. And this is, here we are, this has got what, 23 more horsepower and 36 more torque out of the same displacement, but in a vehicle for 7 passengers that's rated to tow, and I don't know. All I can say is change your oil early and often if you have one of these, because if you do keep it for a long time, you will reap dividends of reliability, I think, out of that, because oil life would be a concern on this engine, especially if you're working it hard. And let me just take this opportunity to say F Subaru for not bringing out a new generation STI. This car, though, for what it is, this is meant to be a family car. I think the driving experience is very, very good because the ride is smooth, so you're not going to upset the kids in the back with the ride. The handling's fine. You know, I would say for the size of the vehicle, when you put it in all-wheel drive mode, the handling's actually very good. And in front-wheel drive, it's fine. There's nothing to offend you there. And the engine has enough power. It doesn't sound great, but if you've got a cacophony of cackling children behind you, which I feel like a lot of Traverse owners probably do, you're not going to notice that. So the engine does what it needs to do. Yeah, this is a good family car, and I think for a lot of people, this is probably a better choice than a Tahoe. It's cheaper. It's going to get a little bit better gas mileage because it's got a smaller engine and it's not quite as heavy. And because it's unibody, they can do a little bit more with the space utilization. So unless you really need the heavier towing capacity of the Tahoe, this is probably a better choice. And I think it looks cool in this Z71 trim especially. This one's got the all-terrain tires on it from the factory. Don't get a ton of tire noise. Still handles pretty well on a dry road. I haven't taken it off-road, and I'm not going to because it's a Traverse. I'm sure you could do a little bit of off-roading if you wanted, but that's not really my bag. Yeah, driving-wise, this car's good. I like this car. If I needed an SUV for children, I would certainly consider it. You know, it's a pretty crowded field up against Ford Explorer, which I think is now a pretty old design. Dodge Durango, which is definitely a really old design. Subaru Ascent, which is a pretty old design. Honda Pilot, which is a little bit newer. What else is in this class? Nissan Pathfinder? Does anybody buy those anymore? Toyota Grand Highlander, if you can find one at a Toyota dealer. Grand Highlanders are cool. Probably cost you, they're definitely more expensive than this. There's a person on a motorcycle passing on a double yellow. It's very responsible and logical behavior on a Sunday afternoon. This person is very rude on this motorcycle. Transmission shifts super smooth. You know, the engine does make good power. I mean, I'm maybe at 50% throttle coming up the hill, totally going as fast as I need to, no trouble whatsoever. Engine doesn't sound great, but it can do the job. So yeah, that's, you know, that's basically the story when it comes to the old Traverse Z71. I actually like this car more than I expected to. I've been driving it for a couple of days. Haven't driven a new body style Traverse yet. I've driven some older ones, but I think this is nice. I like it. There's a guy doing a wheelie. Motorcyclists are always the most logical and rational people you can find. And on that note, I'm going to end my test drive video. I will go film my full review on this car right now. So I'll put a link to that in the description. You can check that out at your leisure. Please like the video, subscribe to my channel, leave me a comment, and have a fantastic day. Bye-bye.